Hey everyone, it's the Angry Honey Badger, and it's time for another episode of League Talks. If you have any questions for future League Talks episodes, don't be afraid to send me a message on YouTube as a private message and label it League Talks, or sending me an email at angryhoneybadger@hotmail.com. Today's game in the background is an ARAM game, which I did stream on Twitch. I did play with subscribers, in case any of you may have saw that post, I think, last week. I'm lagging like crazy in this game as Cho'Gath, so you might be like, why are you just standing in a bush while your team dies and then you go out and KS everyone? It's because I was lagging that bad that I was just that late to all those fights. It's actually kind of hilarious. So, that's what's going on in the background. So, jumping on into the very first question that I have upon us. Who do you think is the best AP carry? So, kind of a general question, and there's a lot I could talk about here for who I think the best AP carry is. I'm going to cover a few that I think are very strong AP carries, regardless or most of the time. And I'll give some honorable mentions, and obviously any AP carry can be good if they're played very well, but I think some that are pretty easy to play or to master or at least have good results. I'll talk about three of them for the most part. I'm going to talk about Ahri, Brand, and Veigar. Now, Ahri is pretty consistent as an AP carry. Her kit doesn't really demand too much from you. You need to just be able to land your orbs and that taunt, which make her really strong. She does really good damage. She has a built-in flash if you think of her ultimate in that manner. It's also a very good chasing tool, and she can do a lot of damage in a team fight fairly quick. Her cooldowns aren't too ridiculous, so she is a very viable AP champion. She can poke really, really well in lane and farm easily too. So she is actually a really good AP carry if you get her kit down. She's pretty balanced right now too. So for the most part, I think Ahri's a very strong choice for one of the best AP carries. After her, I'd say Brand is probably another really good one. Brand does massive amounts of damage. If you land your abilities, obviously that's going to just stack on top of people. His passive with that built-in ignite, you could say, does lots of good damage and ends up getting him lots of kills in the long run by just kind of having that ignite effect on other champions. So Brand is very strong as well. He takes a little bit, obviously, to get used to playing, but he can blow some enemies up. He farms easily, he's got decent poke, so Brand's another very strong AP carry. Another one that I did mention was Veigar. Now, he is good in so many different ways, but he's also very tough in so many different ways. You really need to understand his kit. He does take a little bit longer, I'd say, practice-wise over Ahri and Brand. He's got a fantastic stun that works great in team fights, so that's one great utility item he has. It also allows him to focus with people, and he's able to get off everything he has for that. His passive is really good, where he gets the mana regeneration, and so he never really is officially running out of mana because he can always regen it because of that. His Q ability stacks more AP every time you lasted a minion with it, so you can in theory have endless amounts of AP depending on how long the game goes on. The longer a game goes on for Veigar, basically the harder he hits on a single individual. He's fantastic for focusing on an enemy champion you want to get rid of. He can basically two-hit someone. So he is a very strong AP carry if you're good with him. He does take some more practice, but he can be incredibly strong. Now, a couple honorably mentioned champs I'll throw in here. I'd say Lux and Mordekaiser. Lux is really good as a carry. She takes a little bit of finesse, and her ultimate is on a very short cooldown. She can use it multiple times in team fights most of the time because it's on a 25-second cooldown, it seems like, at its level 3. But she does take a little bit more skill to use because of the stun and the orb, and she takes a little bit of finesse, and she can be played as a support champion too, so it kind of depends on how you're building her. And then Mordekaiser, if you look at him as an AP carry champion, he can do it in a sense, and he can kind of do it almost any role, so he's kind of strong in another aspect. So obviously there's some other ones that are pretty strong, but they take a little bit more care to kind of figure out how to play. I'd say Ahri and Brand are great places to start if you're looking for strong AP carries that have great poke, great range. You don't have to worry about too much while you're in lane, that farm quite well too. Other than that, I would say keep an eye out for Syndra. After this last patch where they have kind of buffed her back up, I think she could be very strong. She does have some great range, and she has some interesting utility that is going to help out in team fights and do interesting damage. I think she could be very strong if she's going to be played correctly. So I'd say keep an eye out for her too as well. She's going to be probably a champion to maybe come up towards the top AP carries, depending. So keep an eye out for her. The next question that I have for League Talks today asks, who are some of the underrated champions, and what is your opinion on them? Well, this is an interesting question. Obviously, this is going to be way more of my opinion because, you know, it's asking me who I think are some of the underrated champions. Lately, I've seen a decline in some played champions, and that's what I will assume people think are underrated. I've actually seen a lot less Akali's lately, which is kind of interesting. She does do massive damage. So that's kind of an interesting one lately that I've seen people not play, because she's typically played a handful. I don't know if it's just the games I've been in that she hasn't been in, but Kali seems to not have been played so much recently, so I don't know if she's underappreciated, but she does some pretty good damage. Another person that I say probably doesn't get a lot of play that is pretty good is Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger does have some interesting utility and some really odd tactics, and can do some crazy damage with his turrets if you know how to kind of arrange yourself around in a team fight. I do have a Heimerdinger build, so if you're interested on how he works, I know a lot of people don't ever see him, so because he doesn't seem to get played too often, but I'd say Heimerdinger's a little bit underrated. Another champion that I think is starting to get played a little bit more, but kind of was on a downfall for a little bit, was Kale. Kale doesn't get played too often because she can kind of do a lot of weird roles. She can play support in bottom lane. She can kind of act as an AD carry. She can go mid lane. She can go top. She can go jungle. It's really odd for Kale to kind of do a certain role without someone arguing on why you're doing it. Some people think she's just a straight up AP kind of person. Some people think she's straight up AD. Some people swear by hybrid. And some people swear by her being support. So she kind of gets a lack of play because you're kind of afraid to play her in a certain position. My very first build, I think, was a Kale build. It's really old. It's a little bit outdated. The items still work for it. It's kind of an attack speed hybrid build. I might try to actually rework with her and play her. I think she's really fun to play, and she has some fun stuff. But she seems to be a little bit underappreciated because she can do some crazy damage late game if she gets even just a tiny bit ahead. The next champion I'd say that's probably a little underappreciated and I've never ever seen played tons is Poppy. Poppy does do some significant damage, and she's a really interesting bruiser because of her ultimate and some of the utility that she brings along to her kit. She's not played often at all. She's probably one of the least played champions in the game would be my guess. Don't see her too often. A good Poppy player though will just make you have a horrible day because a good Poppy just wrecks teams. So Poppy's another champion that's just kind of underappreciated, I'd say. And then finally, I've beaten this one to death a few times. Trundle is my last pick for kind of underappreciated champions. A lot of people don't play him. A lot of people think that he's boring. He's a very good jungler. He's got decent gankings. He can go top lane and stay up there for days and farm. His Q ability, which is his bite, does plenty of damage and can scare people early game because of the output that it has. So Trundle's kind of underappreciated. He does take a tiny bit to get under your belt and kind of figure out exactly when you want to and how you want to use him, but he's another strong champion that I think is just a little bit underappreciated for the most part. So maybe some of these champions we'll see, I don't know, not buffed necessarily, but maybe played more so in the future. Maybe I'll make builds for some of them that I don't have builds for. I know I got that old Kale build, I do have Trundle builds, I have that Heimerdinger build, and I have an old Akali build, so maybe take a look at those if you're wondering about any of those champions. But other than that, that is pretty much who I would say are some of the underappreciated or underrated champions in the game. That's going to be all for the questions I'm going to answer this week because frankly, I don't really have any other questions. I need some more. That'd be great if you guys send them to me. Try to keep them, I don't want to say super long, but keep them kind of brief. And asking me to make a champion build video for someone I haven't doesn't count as a League Talks video. I've had a few people title stuff League Talks and say, can you make a Tristana build? Can you make a Warwick build? That doesn't count as a League Talks video. So send me a real question. I will answer them. I like doing League Talks. I think it does help a few people out. So if you have any questions, send them to me as a private message on YouTube, label it as League Talks, or send them to me as an email to angryhoneybadger@hotmail.com, and I will answer them in the future. But other than that, guys, I'll just see all of you in the next video.